The morning sun cast long shadows across the dusty main street of Willow Creek as Clara Whitmore stood before the cracked mirror in her family's modest parlor. Her trembling fingers fumbled with the pearl buttons of her mother's wedding dress, now yellowed with age and smelling faintly of lavender sachets. Outside, she could hear the church bells tolling, each chime a countdown to her fate. "Clara, dear, you mustn't dawdle," her mother called from the doorway, her voice strained with false cheer. "Reverend Hale expects punctuality." Clara's stomach churned at the mention of her intended. Luther Hale was a man of 43 years, his first wife having passed 2 winters ago under circumstances that sparked whispers among the townswomen. He ruled his congregation with an iron fist wrapped in scripture, his sermons more about damnation than salvation. When he'd approached her father about the marriage, offering to clear their debts to the bank in exchange for Clara's hand, her parents had seen divine providence. Clara saw only a cage with no key. "I'm nearly ready, Mother," Clara replied, her voice steady despite the storm within. At 22, she'd watched her friends marry for love, seen the light in their eyes when they spoke of their husbands. She would have no such luxury. Her father appeared in the doorway, his once proud shoulders now stooped with the weight of failed ventures and mounting debts. "You're doing a noble thing, Clara. The family will never forget your sacrifice." Sacrifice. The word tasted bitter on her tongue. She turned to face him, searching his weathered face for any sign of the father who'd once promised her she could be anything she dreamed. That man had vanished along with their fortune. "I know, Papa," she whispered. The ceremony was mercifully brief. Luther's cold fingers gripped hers as he slipped a simple gold band onto her finger, his gray eyes holding no warmth, only possession. The few witnesses, mostly Luther's devoted followers, murmured their approval. Clara's parents sat in the front pew, her mother dabbing at tears that Clara suspected were more relief than joy. "You may kiss your bride," the visiting minister pronounced. Luther's lips were dry and brief against hers, a transaction completed rather than a promise of affection. Clara suppressed a shudder. Within an hour, she found herself in Luther's covered wagon, her few belongings packed in a worn trunk. The journey to his mission station would take them through the treacherous mountain passes, a day and a half of travel if the weather held. "Samuel will accompany us," Luther informed her, gesturing to a grizzled man who'd served as the church's handyman. "The mountains harbor all manner of lawlessness. We must be vigilant against Satan's instruments." Clara nodded, already feeling the weight of her new role. Luther expected a wife who would be seen and not heard, who would manage his household and warm his bed without complaint. She pressed her hand against the small knife hidden in her boot, a gift from her grandmother years ago. "For protection," the old woman had said with a knowing look. Clara hadn't understood then. She did now. The first hours passed in uncomfortable silence. Luther read from his Bible, occasionally glancing at her with an expression she couldn't decipher. Samuel drove the wagon with practiced ease, humming hymns under his breath. The landscape gradually changed from the familiar flatlands around Willow Creek to the rocky foothills of the mountain range. As afternoon shadows lengthened, they reached Skeleton Pass, a narrow corridor between towering cliffs that had claimed more than one traveler. The locals said it was cursed, that the spirits of those who died there lingered, waiting to claim more souls. Clara had never believed in such tales, but as the walls closed in around them, she felt a chill that had nothing to do with the mountain air. "Steady now," Samuel muttered to the horses as they picked their way along the treacherous path. Loose stones clattered down into the ravine below, the sound echoing ominously. It happened without warning. A sharp crack split the air, perhaps a rockfall, perhaps something else. The horses reared, wild-eyed with terror. Samuel fought to control them, but the wagon lurched violently. Clara heard Luther's sharp intake of breath, saw Samuel's eyes widen in fear, and then the world tilted sideways. The wagon tipped, balanced for one heart-stopping moment on 2 wheels, then crashed over the edge. Clara was thrown clear. landing hard among the rocks as the wagon tumbled down the slope in a cacophony of splintering wood and screaming horses. She lay stunned, her vision blurring, aware of warm blood trickling down her forehead. "Samuel?" she called weakly. "Luther?" Only silence answered her, fighting waves of dizziness. Clara crawled to the edge and peered down. The wagon lay shattered far below, one wheel still spinning lazily. She could make out Samuel's still form among the wreckage. Of Luther, she saw no sign. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of blood and fire. Clara was alone, injured, with the night falling in hostile territory. She pressed her back against the cold stone, trying to stem the bleeding from a gash on her arm. Her wedding dress was torn and stained, the pearl buttons scattered like tiny bones among the rocks. She must have dozed, or perhaps passed out from pain and shock. When she opened her eyes, stars glittered overhead, and a figure stood silhouetted against them. For one wild moment, she thought death had come to claim her. "Easy there, ma'am," a low voice said. "You're hurt pretty bad." The figure knelt beside her, and in the moonlight, she could make out weathered features, dark eyes that held a surprising gentleness, and the distinctive garb of a cattle driver. He smelled of leather and tobacco, sweat and something wild. "My husband?" she began, then stopped. Was Luther even still her husband if he was dead? The thought brought not grief but a shameful sense of relief. "Saw the wreck from up the trail," the stranger said, already examining her injuries with practiced hands. "Ain't nobody could have survived that fall. I'm sorry for your loss." He worked efficiently, cleaning her wounds with water from his canteen, tearing strips from his own shirt to bind them. His hands were calloused, but surprisingly gentle. "Name's Jesse Rollins," he said as he helped her to her feet. "Got a camp not far from here. Can you ride?" Clara nodded, though the movement sent fresh pain lancing through her skull. Jesse whistled, and a bay horse emerged from the shadows, saddled and ready. "We'll take it slow," he promised, lifting her into the saddle as easily as if she weighed nothing. He swung up behind her, one arm secure around her waist to keep her upright. "Just hold on, ma'am. I'll get you somewhere safe." As they rode into the darkness, Clara closed her eyes and leaned back against the solid warmth of this stranger's chest. She should have been terrified, alone with an unknown man in the wilderness. Should have been mourning her husband, or at least maintaining the pretense of grief. Instead, for the first time since her father had announced her engagement, Clara felt something loosen in her chest. The cage door had been torn open by tragedy, and she didn't yet know what lay beyond it. But as Jesse Rollins guided his horse through the treacherous mountain paths with the sure confidence of a man who belonged to this wild land, Clara allowed herself one dangerous thought. Perhaps she wasn't meant to be a preacher's wife after all. Clara woke to the smell of wood smoke and coffee, her body aching in places she didn't know could hurt. Rough wool blankets covered her, and she lay on a makeshift bed of pine boughs covered with canvas. Overhead, the log ceiling of a small cabin came into focus, morning light filtering through gaps in the chinking. Memory flooded back, the crash, the stranger who'd rescued her. "Jesse Rollins?" She sat up too quickly, gasping as the world spun. "Easy there," the voice came from near the stone fireplace. Jesse crouched before the flames, a coffee pot balanced on a flat rock. He turned to look at her, and in daylight she could see him clearly for the first time. He was perhaps 30, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that needed cutting. His jaw bore several days' worth of stubble, and his eyes were the color of strong coffee. There was something watchful about him, like a wolf that had learned to live alongside men but never quite trusted them. "How long have I been sleeping?" Clara asked, her voice hoarse. "Better part of 2 days. Fever broke last night." He poured coffee into a tin cup and brought it to her. "Figured you might be thirsty." Clara accepted the cup gratefully, wrapping her hands around its warmth. The coffee was black and bitter, but she'd never tasted anything so good. She became aware that someone had changed her out of her ruined wedding dress and into a man's shirt and worn trousers. Heat flooded her cheeks. I kept my eyes closed, ma'am, Jessie said, correctly interpreting her embarrassment. Your dress was torn to ribbons and soaked with blood. Couldn't leave you in it. Thank you, she managed. For everything. I should compensate you for your trouble. His mouth quirked in what might have been amusement. With what? Found your things scattered down the mountainside. Weren't much left worth saving. The reality of her situation crashed over her. She was alone, penniless, with no way to return to town and nowhere to go if she did. Her parents would be devastated by the news of the accident, but would they welcome back a daughter who'd failed to secure their financial salvation through marriage? My husband, she began, then stopped. The word felt foreign on her tongue. Found him about a quarter-mile from the wagon, Jessie said quietly. Him and the other fellow. Gave them a proper burial. Said some words over them. Best I could remember. Clara nodded, trying to summon appropriate grief. Luther was dead. The man she'd been bound to mere hours before was gone, and all she felt was a shameful relief. What kind of woman did that make her? You loved him? Jessie asked, then immediately shook his head. Sorry, none of my business. No, Clara set down the coffee cup, surprised by her own honesty. I barely knew him. It was an arranged marriage. My family owed money, and he offered to pay the debts in exchange for... She gestured helplessly at herself. Jessie's expression darkened. Man buys a wife same as he'd buy cattle. Never did sit right with me. It's done all the time, Clara said, though without conviction. A woman must be practical. Practical. He repeated the word like it tasted bad. That what you call it? He stood abruptly and went to tend the fire, adding another log with perhaps more force than necessary. Clara studied his back, the way his shoulders tensed beneath his worn flannel shirt. I should go, she said. You've done enough. If you could just point me toward the nearest town. Nearest town's 3 days' ride through hostile territory, Jessie said without turning. And that's if you know the way and have a horse, which you don't. Then I'll walk. He turned then, and something flashed in his eyes, anger or concern. She couldn't tell which. In those wounds, with no supplies, you wouldn't make it 5 miles before the coyotes found you. Or worse. Then what do you suggest, Mr. Rollins? Clara lifted her chin, summoning what dignity she could while wearing a stranger's clothes in a stranger's cabin. I can hardly impose on your hospitality indefinitely. Why not? He crossed his arms, leaning against the rough wall. Got nowhere else to be for a spell. Cabin's plenty big for 2, long as we keep things proper. The implication hung between them. A single woman alone with a single man. No chaperone, no witnesses. Her reputation would be in tatters if anyone found out. Then again, what reputation did she have left? She was supposed to be a respectable preacher's wife, not a refugee dependent on the kindness of a rough-hewn cowboy. I don't even know you, she said softly. No, he agreed. But I know what it's like to have nowhere to go, to lose everything and have to start over. His eyes grew distant. Stay until you're healed. Few weeks, maybe. Then we'll figure out how to get you wherever you want to go. Deal? Clara studied him, this stranger who'd pulled her from the wreckage and asked nothing in return. There was more to his story. She sensed men didn't live alone in mountain cabins unless they were hiding from something or someone. Deal, she said finally. The days that followed fell into an unexpected rhythm. Jessie would rise before dawn to tend to his horses and check his trap lines. Clara would wake to find coffee waiting and sometimes a haunch of venison or rabbit for the stew pot. Her strength returned gradually, though the cuts on her arm and forehead would likely scar. Jessie was unlike any man she'd known. He moved through the world with a quiet confidence, equally comfortable mending harness or cooking beans. He spoke little about himself, though she gathered he'd been driving cattle up from Texas, taking a detour through the mountains for reasons he didn't share. In the evenings, they'd sit by the fire, and sometimes he'd tell stories of the trail, stampedes under lightning-split skies, river crossings gone wrong, the peculiar brotherhood that formed among men who faced death together as a matter of course. Why do it? Clara asked one night, darning a hole in her borrowed shirt. Why choose such a dangerous life? Jessie poked at the fire with a stick, sending sparks spiraling upward. Freedom, I suppose, out there. A man is what he makes of himself. Nobody cares who your daddy was or how much money you got. Just whether you can sit a horse and keep your word. And women. The question slipped out before she could stop it. His smile was rueful. Not many women on the trail. Those that are, well, they're usually running from something same as the men. Is that what you think I'm doing? Running? He looked at her then. Really looked at her. And Clara felt heat that had nothing to do with the fire. Aren't you? She bent her head over her sewing, unable to hold his gaze, because he was right. She'd been running even before the accident, trapped in a life shaped by other people's expectations and failures. The crash had simply provided an escape she'd never have had the courage to choose. There's no shame in running, Jessie said quietly. Sometimes it's the only sane thing to do. That night, Clara lay awake listening to the wind in the pines and Jessie's steady breathing from his bedroll by the door. He'd insisted she take the bed, such as it was, and maintained a respectful distance that both grateful for and inexplicably frustrated by. She thought of Luther, already becoming a shadowy figure in her memory. Would he have been cruel or merely indifferent? Would she have borne his children and grown old in that mission station, her dreams withering like flowers in drought? The fire burned low, casting dancing shadows on the walls. In the morning, Jessie would teach her to shoot. He'd promised, woman alone needs to know how to protect herself, he'd said, and something in his voice suggested he spoke from experience. Clara closed her eyes, her hand moving unconsciously to the empty space on her finger where Luther's ring had been. She'd lost it in the crash, that symbol of bondage, and felt only relief. For the first time in months, perhaps years, she fell asleep without dread of tomorrow. The days stretched into a week, then 2. Clara's wounds healed, leaving pink scars that would fade with time. Jessie taught her to handle his Winchester rifle, standing behind her to adjust her stance, his hands steady on her shoulders. Breathe out slow, then squeeze gentle-like. He instructed, don't jerk it. The tin can exploded off the fence post, and Clara laughed with delight. It was an unseemly sound for a recent widow. But Jessie grinned at her enthusiasm. Natural-born shooter, he said. Few more lessons and you'll be out shooting me. I doubt that. Clara lowered the rifle, aware of how close he stood, the warmth radiating from his body in the cool mountain air. You've had years of practice. Had to learn young, Jessie said, his smile fading. World's not kind to those who can't defend themselves. That evening, as Clara prepared their simple meal of beans and cornbread, she noticed Jessie cleaning his pistol with unusual care, his movements tense. Something wrong? She asked. Storm coming. He nodded toward the window where clouds massed on the horizon. Big one, by the look of it. We'd best bring in extra wood. They worked together, stacking split logs against the cabin wall. The wind picked up, sending pine needles swirling. By nightfall, the first fat snowflakes were falling. Snow? But it's barely October, Clara said, peering out at the whirling white. Mountains don't follow calendars. Jessie secured the door with a heavy bar. Could be a blizzard. Seen them last 3 days up here. Clara's stomach tightened. 3 days trapped in this small cabin with Jessie. The propriety they'd carefully maintained already felt fragile as old parchment. The storm hit with a fury that shook the cabin walls. Wind howled like a living thing, seeking cracks in the chinking. Jessie kept the fire blazing, but cold seeped in regardless. Here. He draped a buffalo robe around Clara's shoulders. Stay close to the fire. What about you? I'm fine. But she could see him shivering as he checked the windows, making sure the shutters held. By the second night, the temperature had plummeted, their breath misted in the air despite the fire. Clara woke to find her blankets crusted with frost and Jessie's bedroll empty. She found him sitting by the dying fire, feeding it the last of their easily accessible wood. Jesse? Go back to bed, he said through chattering teeth. I'll keep the fire going. You're freezing. She could see it in the way he hunched over, the violent trembling of his hands. This is foolish. We need to share warmth. His head snapped up. Clara, I'm not suggesting anything improper, she said firmly, though her heart hammered. But we'll both freeze to death if we stand on ceremony. Please. She saw the war in his face. Propriety against survival. Desire against honor. Finally. He nodded. They arranged their bedding close to the fire, the buffalo robe spread over both of them. Clara lay rigid at first, acutely aware of every inch between them. Jesse was careful not to touch her, but she could feel his warmth, smell the leather and wood smoke scent of him. Talk to me, she said into the darkness. Tell me something about yourself. Anything. He was quiet so long she thought he'd refused. Then, had a brother once, younger than me, Thomas. What happened to him? Got blamed for something he didn't do. Horse theft. The good people of Willow Creek decided he was guilty. Preacher man led the charge. Said God had shown him the truth in a vision. His voice went flat. They hanged him from a cottonwood tree. He was 19. Clara's blood chilled. Willow Creek, but that's your hometown. Yeah. She felt him shift slightly. The preacher who condemned him was Luther Hale. The revelation hit like a physical blow. Clara's mind reeled, pieces clicking together. Jesse's tension when she'd mentioned being a widow. His dark expression when she'd spoken of arranged marriages. You knew, she whispered. When you found me, you knew who I was. Saw the wedding announcement in the newspaper last time I passed through town. Clara Whitmore to wed Reverend Luther Hale. His laugh was bitter. Thought about riding in, telling you what kind of man you were marrying. But what right did I have? You didn't know me from Adam. So when you found me on that mountain, seemed like fate playing a cruel joke. Luther Hale's bride, needing my help. Part of me wanted to leave you there. She felt him turn toward her in the darkness. But I looked at you, hurt and alone. And all I could see was someone else trapped by that man's cruelty. Couldn't do it. Clara's eyes burned with unshed tears. I'm sorry about your brother. Weren't your doing. But I would have been his wife. Would have lived in his house, borne his children, never knowing. Would you have been happy? Jesse asked suddenly. Knowing what you know now? No, Clara admitted. Even before, I think I sensed something wrong in him. The way his congregation feared him more than loved him. The whispers about his first wife. They lay in silence, the storm raging outside. The fire popped and settled, almost without thought. Clara shifted closer, drawn by warmth and something more. Clara! Jesse's voice was strained. You're grieving. You're vulnerable. I won't take advantage. I'm not grieving, she said fiercely. I should be, but I'm not. All I feel is free. For the first time in my life, I'm free. She turned to face him, close enough to see his eyes reflecting the firelight. That day you asked why I was running. I wasn't then, but I am now. With you, if you'll have me. You don't know what you're saying. The kind of life I lead, it's no life for a lady. I'm not a lady. Clara reached out, her fingers finding his face, tracing the line of his jaw. I'm just a woman who wants to choose her own path. Choose who she... He caught her hand, his breath ragged. Don't say it. Once you say it, there's no taking it back. Then I won't say it, Clara whispered. But Jesse, I'm so tired of being cold. His resistance crumbled. He pulled her against him, her head fitting perfectly beneath his chin. His arms came around her, strong and sure, and Clara felt something inside her unwind for the first time in months. Just for tonight, he murmured into her hair, to keep warm. But they both knew it was a lie. The storm had stripped away pretense, leaving only truth. They held each other as the blizzard raged, two souls finding shelter from more than just the cold. When Clara woke, the storm had passed. Weak sunlight filtered through the shutters, and Jesse was already up, rebuilding the fire. But the careful distance between them was gone. When their eyes met, Something electric passed between them. "Storm's broken," he said unnecessarily. "Yes." Clara sat up, the buffalo robe sliding from her shoulders. "Jesse, about last night." "We survived," he said quickly. "That's all that matters." But his eyes lingered on her face, and she saw in them the same hunger she felt. They'd crossed a line in the darkness, and there was no going back. The question now was whether they'd have the courage to cross the next one. "Teach me to ride," Clara said suddenly. "Not side saddle, but properly. Like you do." His eyebrows rose. "That's not exactly proper for a woman. I think we've established I'm not exactly a proper woman." That startled a laugh from him. "No, I suppose you're not." He studied her, and she saw him making a decision. "All right, but if you're going to ride like a man, you'll need proper clothes. Can't have you breaking your neck because your skirts got tangled." Clara smiled, feeling reckless and alive. "Whatever you say. Teacher." The storm had passed, but another was building between them, just as powerful and potentially just as destructive. And Clara found she didn't care. She'd spent her whole life being careful, being good, being what others expected. Now, in this cabin with this man who'd saved her life and told her his darkest secret, she wanted to be brave instead. The decision made, they began preparing to leave the mountain cabin. Jesse taught Clara to ride astride, her legs gripping the horse's flanks instead of perched decorously on a side saddle. She wore a pair of his old trousers, taken in with rough stitches, and one of his flannel shirts. "You're a natural," Jesse said, watching her guide the mare through a series of turns. "Most folks take weeks to get that comfortable." Clara flushed with pride. "I had a good teacher." They packed what little they could carry: blankets, ammunition, dried meat and hardtack, a few cooking implements. The rest Jesse left for whoever might need shelter in the future. "Where are we going?" Clara asked as they prepared to set out. Jesse's expression was unreadable. "South. Got a place in mind. If you trust me, I trust you." The words came without hesitation. They rode through valleys still dusted with snow from the storm, following trails Clara could barely see, but Jesse navigated with ease. At night they camped under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. On the third day, they created a rise and Jesse pulled up short. Below lay a small valley, protected on three sides by towering cliffs. A stream wound through it, and Clara could see the remains of what had once been a homestead, a cabin with half its roof caved in, a broken corral, the stone foundation of a barn. "What is this place?" Clara asked softly. "Home," Jesse said, his voice thick. "Or it was, once, my family's ranch. Haven't been back since—" He trailed off. "Since his brother died." Clara reached out, touching his arm. "We don't have to stay here. We can go somewhere else." "No!" Jesse squared his shoulders. "Running from it won't bring Thomas back. Besides, it's defensible, got water, good grazing. We could make something of it again." "We." The word hung between them, full of promise and uncertainty. They spent the first days clearing debris and patching the cabin roof. Jesse worked with fierce determination, as if he could rebuild his past with hammer and nails. Clara helped where she could, learning to mix chinking for the gaps between logs, hauling water from the stream. At night they sat by the fire, exhausted but oddly content. The careful distance they'd maintained was gone, replaced by casual touches. His hand on her elbow to steady her, her fingers brushing his when she passed him coffee. "Tell me about him," Clara said one evening. "About Thomas." Jesse stared into the flames. "He was everything I wasn't. Book smart, gentle. Wanted to be a doctor, help folks. Used to practice on injured animals, setting birds' wings and such." A sad smile crossed his face. "Would have been a good one, too." "How did it happen? The accusation?" "Rancher named Morrison lost some horses. Valuable breeding stock. Thomas had been seen near the pasture the day before. He'd been tending a hawk with a broken wing he'd found. That was enough for Morrison. He went to Reverend Hale, knowing the man's influence. Jesse's hands clenched. Hale declared he'd had a vision, said God showed him Thomas taking the horses, selling them to outlaws. Didn't matter that Thomas had never stolen so much as an apple in his life. Didn't matter there was no proof. Hale's word was law in Willow Creek. Did you try to stop it? I was driving cattle in Kansas. By the time I got word and rode back, it was done. Found him still hanging from that tree. Crows circling. His voice broke. Cut him down myself. Buried him next to our parents. Clara moved without thinking, wrapping her arms around him. He stiffened, then pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. I wanted to kill Hale, he whispered. Wanted to burn that whole town to the ground, but Thomas wouldn't have wanted that. So I left. Been drifting ever since. Until now, Clara said softly. He pulled back to look at her, his eyes dark with emotion. Until now. The moment stretched between them. Taut as a bowstring, Clara knew she should move away, maintain some pretense of propriety. Instead, she reached up, her fingers tracing the line of his jaw. Clara, he said, her name a warning and a plea. I know, but she didn't move away. I know all the reasons why we shouldn't. I'm a recent widow. We're from different worlds. It's too soon, too fast, too everything. Then why? Because for the first time in my life, I get to choose. Her voice fierce with conviction. Not my parents, not society, not God, me. And I choose you, Jesse Rollins. His control shattered. He kissed her with a hunger that matched her own. Months of careful distance exploding into desperate need. Clara responded with equal fervor, her hands tangling in his hair. When they broke apart, both breathing hard. Jesse rested his forehead against hers. You sure about this? Once we cross this line. We already crossed it, Clara said. That night in the storm. Maybe even before that. Maybe the moment you found me on that mountain. They came together again, but slower this time, savoring. Jesse's hands were gentle as they explored, treating her like something precious. Clara had expected to feel shame, guilt, something. Instead, she felt only rightness, as if she'd finally found where she belonged. Later, they lay entwined on the narrow bed, a blanket draped over their bodies. Clara traced lazy patterns on Jesse's chest, marveling at the freedom to touch him. What happens now? She asked. Now we build a life. Jesse said simply, make this place whole again, run some cattle, maybe horses, live free. Together. If you'll have me. I know I'm not what you were raised to want. No fancy house, no social standing. Just a broken-down ranch and a man with too many ghosts. Clara rose up on one elbow to look at him. You're exactly what I want. The only thing I've ever chosen for myself. The town will come looking eventually, Jesse warned. Your parents, maybe the law. Folks don't take kindly to widows who don't properly mourn. Let them come. Clara's chin lifted defiantly. I'll tell them the truth, that I'm finally living the life I want, with the man I choose. Jesse pulled her down for another kiss. My brave Clara, stronger than you know. They made love again as dawn broke over the mountains. Slow and tender. Each touch was a promise, each kiss a vow more binding than any spoken in a church. Afterward, they rose and dressed, ready to face the day's work. There was still so much to do. Fences to mend, a well to dig, supplies to gather before winter set in earnest. But as Clara watched Jesse move about the cabin, she felt a contentment she'd never known. This was what she'd been running toward all along, even before she knew it. Not just freedom from an unwanted marriage, but freedom to become who she was meant to be. No regrets? Jesse asked, catching her watching him. None, Clara said firmly. Except maybe that it took a tragedy to bring us together. Sometimes that's how life works, Jesse said. Beauty from ashes, my mother used to say. Clara thought of Luther, buried on a mountainside, and felt only a distant sadness for the man he might have been if hatred hadn't consumed him. Then she looked at Jesse, alive and vital and hers, and knew she'd make the same choice again. They had chosen each other against all convention, all expectation. Now they would build something new from the ruins of their old lives, something strong enough to weather whatever storms came. Together, the peace of their mountain sanctuary shattered on a crisp morning 3 weeks later. Jesse had ridden out to check the fence line, leaving Clara to tend the garden plot they'd started. She was knee-deep in turned earth when she heard the horses. 2 riders approached from the North Trail, moving with the purposeful pace of men who knew exactly where they were going. Clara's hand went instinctively to the rifle Jesse insisted she keep close, but she recognized the futility. She was outnumbered and outgunned. The men reined up just outside the garden fence. Both wore long dusters and carried themselves with the dangerous confidence of those who made their living with guns. The older one, grizzled with a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, touched his hat brim in mock courtesy. "Mrs. Hale," he said, and Clara's blood chilled at the name. "Been looking for you. I'm afraid you're mistaken," Clara said, proud that her voice remained steady. "There's no one here by that name." The younger man, barely out of his teens but with cold eyes that belonged on someone much older, laughed. "That so? Funny. You match the description perfect. Pretty blonde woman, about 22, recently widowed when her husband's wagon went off Skeleton Pass. Lots of blonde women in the territory." Clara said, "Maybe so." The older man agreed. "But not many take up with the brother of a horse thief right after. That'd be a mighty strange coincidence." Clara's finger found the rifle's trigger. "I think you gentlemen should leave." "Can't do that. Ma'am, been paid good money to bring you back to Willow Creek." "Your folks are mighty worried. Say you must have been kidnapped, forced against your will. Poor grieving widow and all." "No one forced me to do anything." "Well now, that's not how the good Reverend Morrison sees it." The scarred man's smile was unpleasant. "Says Jesse Rollins murdered a man of God and stole his bride. Price on his head now, $1,000. Dead or alive." Clara's heart hammered, but she kept her expression neutral. "Jesse Rollins saved my life. My husband died in an accident." "Convenient accident," the younger one said. "Right when Rollins happened to be nearby." "You should go," Clara said. "Now." The scarred man's hand moved toward his gun. "Don't think so. You're coming with us, one way or another. Question is whether your man dies today or hangs legal-like in town." The rifle shot cracked across the valley, and dust kicked up inches from the scarred man's horse. The animal reared, nearly unseating its rider. "Next one won't miss." Jesse's voice carried from the ridge above. "Touch her, and you'll be dead before you clear leather." Clara had never been so relieved to hear another person's voice. She kept her own rifle trained on the men as Jesse appeared, moving down the slope with his Winchester held steady. "Rollins," the scarred man said. "Should have known you'd turn up. Like a bad penny." "McGrath." Jesse's voice was flat, still doing Morrison's dirty work. "I see. Man's gotta eat. Nothing personal." "It's personal to me." Jesse had reached level ground, positioning himself between Clara and the bounty hunters. "Get off my land." "Your land?" McGrath laughed. "This spread belongs to the bank now. Has since your brother swung. We're standing on public property." Jesse's jaw tightened. "I said go." "Can't do that. Got a job to finish." "Your job's done." Jesse said, "Go back and tell Morrison and whoever else hired you that Clara Whitmore is dead. Died in that wagon crash, same as her husband. All you found was graves." McGrath considered this. "And what's in it for us? We go back empty-handed. We don't get paid." Jesse reached into his vest, pulling out a leather pouch. He tossed it to McGrath, who caught it one-handed. "200 in gold. All I've got. Take it and ride away." The younger bounty hunter started to protest, but McGrath held up a hand. He hefted the pouch thoughtfully. "Not 1,000, but it's something." He looked at Clara. "You sure about this, ma'am? Life on the run ain't no life for a lady." "I'm where I choose to be," Clara said firmly. McGrath studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Your funeral." He wheeled his horse around. "Come on, boy. We're done here." "But McGrath," "I said we're done." Woman wants to throw her life away. That's her business. They watched until the riders disappeared over the ridge. Only then did Jesse lower his rifle, his hands shaking slightly. "Pack what you can carry," he said. "We need to move." They said they were leaving. McGrath's honorable. In his way. He'll give us a head start, but others will come. Morrison won't give up, not with his pride at stake. Jesse's face was grim. "I'm sorry. Clara, I should have known this would happen." Clara set down her rifle and went to him, taking his face in her dirt-stained hands. "Don't you dare apologize. I knew what I was choosing." "Did you? Really?" His eyes searched hers. "Because this is just the beginning. We'll always be looking over our shoulders, never able to settle anywhere too long. Is that really what you want?" "What I want," Clara said fiercely, "is you, everything else. We'll figure out as we go." He kissed her then, hard and desperate. When they broke apart, some of the tension had left his shoulders. "There's a place," he said, "down near the Mexican border. A friend who owes me a favor. We could hole up there for a while. Let things cool down." Clara nodded. "Then that's where we'll go." They worked quickly, packing only essentials. Clara felt a pang leaving the garden she'd started, the cabin they'd been slowly making into a home. But home, she was learning, wasn't a place. It was the man currently saddling their horses with swift, efficient movements. As they prepared to ride out, Jesse paused at a spot near the corral. He dismounted, kneeling in the grass, and Clara realized this must be where Thomas was buried. "I'm sorry, little brother," he said quietly. "Thought maybe I could make things right here, rebuild what they took, but seems like the past won't let go." Clara dismounted and joined him, her hand on his shoulder. Maybe that's not what he'd want anyway. Maybe he'd want you to live free, find happiness where you can. Jesse covered her hand with his. "Think he would have liked you. Always said I needed someone to knock sense into me. I'll do my best," Clara promised. They rode out as the sun climbed toward noon, heading south through passes Jesse knew from his cattle driving days. Clara didn't look back. She'd made her choice with eyes wide open, knowing the cost. That night, camped in a grove of cottonwoods by a small spring. Jesse dressed the rabbit he'd shot for dinner while Clara gathered firewood. It was a routine they'd developed, working in comfortable synchronization. "Tell me about this friend," Clara said as they ate. "The one near the border." "Joaquin Mendoza. Ran cattle together a few years back. Good man. Has a spread down in the desert, far enough from civilization that the law tends to forget it exists. And he'll help us? I saved his life once, Apache ambush. He says he owes me." Jesse poked at the fire. "Plus, he's got no love for men like Morrison. Lost his own brother to a lynch mob." Clara stared into the flames, thinking of all the violence that seemed to follow them. Will it always be like this? Running, fighting, never able to rest? "Maybe not always," Jesse said. "Things change. People forget. Or maybe we head further west, California or Oregon. Start fresh where nobody knows us. Mr. and Mrs. Rollins," Clara said softly, trying on the name. Jesse's smile was tender. "If you'll have me proper. When we find a preacher who won't ask too many questions. I'd marry you tonight if I could. Speak vows under these stars with God as our witness." "Then let's do it." Jesse stood, pulling her to her feet. He took her hands in his expression serious in the firelight. "Clara Whitmore, I take you as my wife, to have and hold, for better or worse, in plenty and in want, in sickness and health, for as long as we both shall live." Tears ran down Clara's cheeks as she spoke her own vows. "Jesse Rollins, I take you as my husband, to have and hold, forsaking all others, through whatever trials may come, until death parts us." They sealed their promises with a kiss under the vast desert sky. No witnesses save the stars and the coyotes singing in the distance. Later, as they made love on their spread blankets, Clara thought she'd never felt more married than in this moment, bound by choice rather than convention. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The running, the danger, the uncertainty. All of it was bearable as long as Jesse's arms were around her and his heart beat beneath her hand. They were outlaws now, she supposed, but they were free. The journey south stretched into weeks of hard riding through increasingly desolate country. They skirted towns, buying supplies from isolated trading posts where questions weren't asked if your gold was good. Jesse knew the hidden ways, deer paths and dry washes that kept them away from main roads and prying eyes. They finally left familiar territory, crossing into lands where the trees grew twisted and strange, where red rocks rose like ancient monuments from seas of sage. The desert was alien to Clara, beautiful and terrifying in its vastness. The Mexicans call it the Journey of Death, Jesse said one evening as they camped in the shadow of towering mesas. El Jornada del Muerto, but there's life here if you know where to look. He was right, despite the harsh landscape. They found hidden springs, saw deer ghosting through the brush at dawn, watched eagles circling in skies so blue it hurt to look at them. At night, the stars seemed close enough to pluck like fruit, but always, they kept watch. Jesse had taught Clara to read sign, the broken twig that meant someone had passed, the dust cloud that could be riders on their trail. They slept in shifts, one always awake with a rifle across their knees. It was Clara's watch when she heard them, horses moving through the canyon below their camp. She woke Jesse with a touch, and he was instantly alert, reaching for his gun. How many? He breathed. 3, maybe 4. They waited, tense as drawn bowstrings, but the riders passed without stopping. Still, it was a reminder that they weren't truly safe. Might never be. The next day, they reached the edge of true desert, an expanse of sand and rock that shimmered with heat even in late autumn. Jesse pointed to mountains hazed purple in the distance. Joaquin's place is in those foothills. Another day, maybe 2. But as they descended into a maze of arroyos, Jesse pulled up sharp. Fresh tracks crossed their path, many horses, moving fast. He dismounted to study them, his face darkening. Apache, he said. War party, from the looks of it, heading the same direction we are. Clara's hand went to her rifle. What do we do? We be very careful, and we hurry. They pushed harder, Jesse constantly scanning the horizons. The land here was perfect for ambush, 1,000 places where warriors could hide. Clara had heard stories of what Apache did to captives, especially women, and her skin crawled with more than desert heat. Camp that night was cold. Jesse wouldn't risk a fire. They huddled together for warmth, speaking in whispers. Tell me about when you saved Joaquin, Clara said, needing distraction from the danger surrounding them. Wasn't much to it. We were driving cattle up from Sonora. Got hit in a box canyon. I saw Joaquin go down. Horse shot from under him. Managed to get him up behind me. Rode out under their noses. You make it sound simple. Most brave things are simple when you're doing them. It's the thinking about them before and after that's complicated. A coyote yipped in the distance, answered by another, and another. Too many coyotes, Jesse's tension told her. He eased his pistol from its holster. The attack came at dawn. Clara woke to Jesse shoving her behind a boulder as arrows whistled through the air where they'd been sleeping. Their horses screamed and plunged against their picket line. Stay down! Jesse snapped, then rolled to a better position, his rifle cracking sharp in the morning air. Clara peered around the rock. She could see movement among the rocks, painted faces, the glint of weapons. Her hands were steady as she raised her own rifle, sighting on a warrior creeping toward their horses. The shot took him center mass. He fell without a sound. Good girl, Jesse said grimly. Leave her working another round. The fight seemed to last forever but was probably only minutes. Jesse was deadly calm, choosing his shots with terrible precision. Clara reloaded with trembling fingers, fired again. The warriors pressed closer, using every scrap of cover. Then, suddenly, it was over. The Apache melted away like smoke, leaving only 2 bodies among the rocks. Jesse waited long minutes before moving, then quickly checked their attackers. Young bucks, he said. Probably out to prove themselves. We were just in the wrong place. Clara was shaking now, reaction setting in. I killed a man, Jesse pulled her against him. You saved our lives, our horses. Without them, we'd die out here just as sure as if they'd put arrows in us. She nodded against his chest, trying to reconcile the necessity with the horror. The man she'd shot looked so young, probably no older than Thomas had been. They rode hard that day, Jesse pushing toward Joaquin's ranch with new urgency. As the sun peaked, they saw smoke rising from beyond a ridge. Too much smoke. No, Jesse breathed, spurring his horse faster. They crested the ridge to find devastation. The ranch buildings were charred ruins, smoke still rising from blackened timbers. Bodies lay scattered in the yard. Mexican vaqueros. Their lives ended violently. Jesse dismounted slowly, moving through the carnage with a stricken expression. He stopped at one body, dropping to his knees. Joaquin, he said hoarsely. Clara stayed mounted, keeping watch while Jesse closed his friend's eyes. The Apache had been thorough. Nothing lived, nothing remained useful. Their last hope for sanctuary was gone. Jesse, Clara said urgently. We need to go. They might come back. He stood slowly, his face carved from stone. Yeah, you're right. They salvaged what they could. Ammunition from the bodies, a few supplies the raiders had missed. Jesse found a spade and insisted on burying Joaquin, though Clara fretted at the delay. Can't leave him for the buzzards, he said. Man deserves that much. As he worked, Clara kept watch, trying not to think about their situation. They were alone in hostile territory, hunted by both law and Apache, with nowhere safe to run. There's a mission, Jesse said as they rode away. San Xavier, about 3 days south, old Spanish place. The fathers there don't ask questions. And after that, I don't know. For the first time since she'd met him, Jesse sounded defeated. Maybe McGrath was right. Maybe this is no life for you. Don't! Clara's voice was sharp. Don't you dare give up on us now! He looked at her, this woman who'd followed him into hell without complaint, who'd killed to protect them both. You deserve better than this, better than always running, always afraid. What I deserve, Clara said firmly, is the man I love. Everything else is just weather. It passes. Despite everything. Jesse smiled. Weather, huh? That's one way to put it. They rode through the afternoon heat, both lost in thought. As shadows lengthened, they found shelter in a cluster of wind-carved rocks. No fire again tonight, but they'd grown used to that. As they shared water and dried meat, Jesse suddenly said, I love you too. Don't think I've said it proper. Clara's throat tightened. You didn't have to. I knew. Still, man should tell his wife such things. He pulled her close. Whatever happens, I want you to know. These weeks with you have been worth everything. Worth all of it. All of... You sound like you're saying goodbye. No, just making sure you know. In case. Clara kissed him fiercely. No, in case. We're going to survive this. Make it to California or Oregon or wherever we have to go. We're going to live. Jesse Rollins. Really live. Not just survive. Have children. Build a home. Grow old together. You hear me? I hear you, he said softly. My brave Clara, stronger than any man I've known. They held each other as darkness fell. Two small figures in an immense and hostile land. Tomorrow they would ride again, toward uncertain sanctuary. But tonight, they had each other, and that was enough. The stars wheeled overhead, silent witnesses to their love and determination. Whatever trials lay ahead, they would face them as they'd faced everything else, together. Defiant, free. They never made it to the mission. 2 days into their journey, Jesse noticed dust clouds behind them, riders following their trail. He'd been pushing their horses hard, but exhaustion was taking its toll on both animals and riders. They're gaining, Clara said, looking back at the persistent cloud. I know. Jesse's jaw was tight. Horses are played out. We need to find defensive ground. They found it in a cluster of ancient ruins, native dwellings carved into a cliff face centuries ago. Jesse positioned Clara in a stone chamber with good sightlines while he took another angle. "If things go bad," he started. "They won't." Clara cut him off. "We've come too far to fail now." The riders appeared as the sun touched the horizon. 6 men, hard-faced and travel-worn. Clara recognized McGrath's younger partner among them, along with others she'd seen in Willow Creek. At their head rode a man in black broadcloth, despite the heat. "Reverend Morrison," Jesse muttered. "Should have known." Morrison dismounted with theatrical care, his voice carrying clearly across the desert. "Brother Rollins, Sister Clara, I have come to offer you salvation." "The only salvation you ever offered was at the end of a rope." Jesse called back. "Your brother was a thief and paid the thief's price." Morrison replied. "But I'm willing to forgive your sins. Return the woman, and you can go free." Clara laughed bitterly. "Still buying and selling women like cattle? Morrison? You belong to the church. Woman, your marriage to Brother Hale, though unconsummated, was sacred. Your whoring with this murderer is an abomination before God." Jesse's rifle cracked, and dust kicked up at Morrison's feet. "Next one goes through your blasphemous throat. Clara is my wife now. We spoke vows before God himself, which is more than your mockery of a church ever offered." Morrison's face darkened. "Then you've chosen damnation. So be it." The attack came at full dark. Clara had expected a frontal assault, but Morrison was cleverer than that. They came from multiple directions, using the broken terrain for cover. Clara fired at muzzle flashes, trying to preserve ammunition. Jesse was a ghost, moving between positions, making it seem like they had more defenders than just 2. Then she heard Jesse curse, a sound of pain. "Jesse?" "I'm all right. Stay focused." But she could hear the lie in his voice. When the attackers pulled back to regroup, Clara scrambled to his position. Blood soaked his left shoulder, black in the moonlight. "Just a graze," he said through gritted teeth. Clara tore strips from her petticoat to bind the wound. "We can't hold them forever. Don't have to, just until dawn. They won't risk a day assault in this heat." But Morrison had other plans. Clara smelled smoke first, then saw flames licking at the dry brush below their position. "He's trying to burn us out," Jesse said. The smoke thickened, choking and blinding. They retreated deeper into the ruins, but there was nowhere to go. The cliff face blocked retreat, and Morrison's men waited below. "Clara," Jesse said, his voice strange, "there's something I need you to do." "No." She knew what he was going to say. "Whatever you're thinking, no." "Listen to me." He gripped her shoulders with his good hand. "There's a chimney crack in the back chamber. Leads to the top of the mesa. You can climb it, get out while they're focused on the fire. Not without you. I can't climb with this shoulder, but I can buy you time, make them think we're both still here. Jesse, no, we stay together. We promised. And I promised to keep you safe." His eyes burned into hers. "This isn't your fight. Never was. Morrison wants me, not you. Once I'm dead, he'll leave you be. You're wrong. He wants to own me, control me, just like Luther did. Without you, I'm as good as dead anyway." The smoke was thicker now, flames visible through the ancient windows. They could hear Morrison's men calling to each other, preparing for the final assault. "Please, Clara, for me, live." She kissed him fiercely. "You want me to live? Then you live too. We go together or not at all." A voice rose above the crackling flames. Not Morrison, someone younger. "Reverend, riders coming." Everything went still except for the fire's roar. Then Clara heard it. Hoofbeats, many of them, approaching fast. "Who in blazes?" Morrison shouted. The night exploded in gunfire, but not directed at them. Clara peered through the smoke to see chaos below, Morrison's men scattering as new riders swept through their positions. "Por aquí, amigos," Jesse straightened. "That's Joaquin's cousin, Miguel. But how?" A young Mexican vaquero appeared through the smoke, bandana over his face. "Senor Jesse, we must go, quickly." They stumbled from the ruins, Jesse leaning heavily on Clara. Below, the fight continued. At least a dozen Mexican riders engaging Morrison's men. Miguel led them to horses, boosting Clara into the saddle. Joaquin sent word before the Apache came, Miguel explained as they rode hard away from the battle. Said you might need help. We've been tracking you for days. They rode through the night. A larger group now. Safety in numbers. By dawn, they'd crossed into Mexico, beyond the reach of American law. Morrison might follow. But here he had no authority. No protection. Miguel's ranch was modest but welcoming. His wife, Rosa, clucked over Jesse's wound like a mother hen, packing it with herbs and binding it properly. Clara collapsed in exhaustion, sleeping for the first time in days without fear. She woke to find Jesse sitting beside her, his arm in a sling, but color returned to his face. Morrison? She asked. Miguel says he survived, but 2 of his men didn't. He won't follow us here. Too many people who remember what he did to their kin over the years. Clara sat up, touching his face. So we're safe? For now. Miguel offers us sanctuary as long as we need it, but you want to go back. Clara finished. To clear your name. Thomas's name. Jesse nodded slowly. Not yet, not until things cool down. But someday. Is that foolish? No, it's who you are. You couldn't live with yourself if you didn't try. She took his hand. When you're ready, we'll go together. It could take years, and it'll be dangerous. I know. Clara smiled. Good thing I married a dangerous man. That evening, they sat in Miguel's courtyard, watching the sun paint the mountains gold. Rosa's children played at their feet, chattering in rapid Spanish. It was peaceful, domestic, a glimpse of the life they might build. I've been thinking, Jesse said, about what you said. Children, a home, growing old together. And? Sounds pretty good. Maybe we stay here a while, learn the language, raise some horses. Then, when the time's right, we go home. Clara finished. Face whatever needs facing. Together. Always together. Miguel appeared with a guitar, and soon the courtyard filled with music. Clara leaned against Jesse's good shoulder, feeling his steady breathing, his solid presence. They'd been through fire and come out the other side. Whatever came next, they could handle it. No regrets, Jesse murmured in her ear. Clara thought of her parents, probably mourning her as dead, of the life she'd left behind, safe, respectable, suffocating, of all the running and fighting and fear. None, she said firmly, not one. The stars came out, brilliant in the clear desert air. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, learning to live in a foreign land, healing from their wounds both physical and emotional. But tonight, they were alive and free and together. Jessie pressed a kiss to her hair. My brave Clara. My dangerous Jessie, she replied, and felt him smile. The music played on, a bridge between their old life and the new. They'd found sanctuary at last. Even if temporary, it was enough. For now, it was everything. 3 years passed in Miguel's valley. Jessie's shoulder healed, leaving only a puckered scar that ached before storms. Clara learned Spanish from Rosa, helped with the children, and discovered she had a gift for training horses. Their own small ranch grew beside Miguel's, a handful of buildings, good stock, the beginning of the life they'd dreamed of. But always, Jessie's eyes would turn north. Clara knew the ghosts wouldn't rest until they returned to face them. The letter came on a spring morning, delivered by a traveling merchant. Clara recognized the handwriting immediately, her mother's careful script. My dearest Clara, she read aloud to Jessie. If this reaches you, know that we never stopped hoping you lived. Your father passed last winter, his heart never recovering from losing you. Before he died, he made me promise to tell you the truth. Luther Hale was no man of God. We knew his nature, but thought marriage would tame him. Our debts blinded us to the evil we were binding you to. Can you forgive us? Clara's hands trembled as she continued. There is more. Marshall came asking questions about Luther's death and your disappearance. Marshal John Beckett. He said he knew Jessie from the cattle drives. He's been investigating Luther and Morrison's activities. Many crimes have come to light. He wants to speak with you both. He promises safe passage if you return. Morrison faces trial for murder and corruption. Your testimony could ensure justice for many, including Thomas Rollins. Jessie was silent for a long moment after she finished. Then, John Beckett's a good man, honest as they come. If he promises safe passage, you want to go back. It wasn't a question. Need to, but not without you. Clara folded the letter carefully. Then we go. It's time. The journey north was different from their flight south. They traveled openly now. Clara in proper dresses again. Jessie clean-shaven and respectable. But both wore guns, and their eyes never stopped scanning the horizons. They met Marshal Beckett in Tucson, a weathered man with kind eyes who greeted Jessie with genuine warmth. Rollins, been too long? He turned to Clara. Ma'am, your mother will be relieved to know you're well. What's this about, John? Jessie asked. Your letter said Morrison's facing trial. Beckett nodded. Luther Hale kept records, detailed accounts of bribes, false accusations, property seized through intimidation. Your brother Thomas was just one of many victims. Morrison was Hale's partner in it all. And you need our testimony? It would seal the case, but I'll be honest, Morrison still has supporters. It won't be without risk. Clara lifted her chin. We've faced worse risks for less important reasons. The trial was set for Willow Creek, a deliberate choice. Beckett explained, let the town see justice done where the crimes happened. Returning to Willow Creek felt like stepping back through time. The town looked smaller than Clara remembered, shabbier, but the courthouse was packed when they arrived, buzzing with anticipation. Clara's mother waited on the courthouse steps, aged beyond her years. Clara, oh, my child. The reunion was tearful but brief. There would be time for reconciliation later. Now, justice waited. Morrison sat at the defendant's table, still dressed in ministerial black but looking diminished. His eyes burned with hatred when he saw Jessie and Clara enter. The prosecutor, a young man from the territorial capital, laid out the case methodically. Financial records, witness testimonies, a pattern of corruption spanning years. Then he called Jessie to testify. Jessie spoke simply, without embellishment, about Thomas, his gentleness, his dreams, his innocence, about finding him hanging from a cottonwood tree for a crime he didn't commit. The courtroom was silent, many remembering the shy young man who'd wanted to heal rather than harm. Clara testified next, about her forced marriage, Luther's true nature, the accident that freed her. She spoke of Jessie's rescue, their flight, Morrison's pursuit into Mexico with murderous intent. He wanted to own me, she said clearly. Like property. When I chose freedom instead, he tried to kill us both. Morrison's lawyer tried to discredit them. A horse thief's brother. A woman who'd abandoned her marriage vows, but the evidence was overwhelming. Other witnesses came forward, emboldened by Jessie and Clara's courage. Families who'd lost land. Men falsely accused. Women coerced into arrangements that enriched Hale and Morrison. The jury deliberated for less than an hour, guilty on all counts. As Morrison was led away in shackles, he passed close to Jessie. Your brother was still a thief, he hissed. I know it in my bones. Jessie's fist clenched, but Clara's hand on his arm stopped him. He's not worth it, she said quietly. Thomas is vindicated. That's what matters. Outside the courthouse, the town seemed lighter somehow, as if a shadow had lifted. People approached Jessie to apologize, to express regret for not speaking up sooner. He accepted their words with quiet dignity, but Clara could see the toll it took. That evening, they stood at Thomas's grave. Someone had tended it over the years, planted wildflowers that bloomed in profusion. Jessie knelt, his hand on the simple headstone. It's done, little brother, he said softly. Your name is clear. You can rest now. Clara gave him a moment alone, then joined him. What now? Jessie stood, looking out over the town where so much pain had begun. Now we live, really live, like you said, build something good from all this hurt. Here? Clara was surprised. Maybe. The ranch is ours again. Beckett says the seizure was illegal. Or maybe we head west like we talked about. California, Oregon, somewhere new? He took her hand. What do you want? Clara considered. The mother in her heart wanted to stay near her own mother, to heal those wounds. But the woman who'd ridden through desert and danger wanted new horizons. I want to build our ranch, she said finally. Make it what your parents dreamed. Then maybe, when it's thriving, we take some of those horses west, see the ocean, give our children choices we never had. Children, Jesse repeated, a smile playing at his lips. That part of the plan starting soon. Clara placed his hand on her still flat belly. Sooner than you might think. Jesse's eyes widened. Then he swept her into his arms, spinning her around right there in the cemetery. Clara, why didn't you tell me? I wanted to be sure, and I wanted to tell you here, where it all began. Full circle. He set her down gently, his hands framing her face. Have I told you lately that you're the strongest, bravest, most wonderful woman in the territory? Not since yesterday, Clara laughed. Shameful oversight. I'll do better. They walked back through town hand in hand. No longer outlaws, but citizens. No longer running, but choosing their ground. People nodded respectfully. The woman who'd defied convention for love. The man who'd fought for his brother's honor. At her mother's house, they found a simple meal waiting and conversation that began to bridge 3 years of separation. Later, in the hotel room, Jesse held Clara as she talked about the future, the child growing within her, the life they'd build, the love that had survived everything the world threw at it. No regrets? He asked. Their old ritual. None, she confirmed. Not one. 6 months later, Clara stood in the doorway of their rebuilt ranch house, watching Jesse work with a young colt in the corral. Her belly was round now, their child quick within her. The house smelled of fresh lumber and hope. Miguel had sent vaqueros to help drive their horses down from Mexico. Her mother visited weekly, knitting tiny clothes and offering advice. The town that had once condemned them now looked to them as examples of courage and redemption. But best of all was this. Jesse coming in dusty from work, his face lighting up when he saw her, his hand gentle on her belly as he felt their baby move. Strong one, he murmured. Like the mother. Stubborn one, Clara corrected. Like the father. As the sun set over the mountains, painting the sky in shades of rose and gold, Clara thought about the journey that had brought them here, the arranged marriage, the accident, the flight into danger and love. Every hardship had led to this moment, standing in their own doorway, on their own land, free to choose their future. Jesse wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her head. What are you thinking? That sometimes the worst things that happen to us lead to the best. Clara said, if that wagon hadn't crashed, I'd have found you anyway. Jesse said firmly. Might have taken longer, but I'd have found you. We were meant to be. Clara Rollins. She turned in his arms, reaching up to touch his face. Yes, she agreed. We were. As stars began to appear in the darkening sky, they went inside to their supper, their home, their life together. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges, a ranch to run, a baby to prepare for, a future to build. But tonight, they had each other, and that was everything. The woman who'd been promised to a preacher and the cowboy who'd caught her had found their way home at last. Not to a place, but to each other, where they'd always belonged. Thank you for listening to this tale from the Wild West. I hope you enjoyed Clara and Jesse's journey as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. Where are you listening from? I'd love to know. Leave a comment below and let's connect across the miles. If you want to hear more stories like this one, please subscribe to Wild West Campfire. And don't forget to share your thoughts about Clara and Jesse's story. Until next time, partners, keep riding toward your own sunset.